Most of you believe that Brenton Tarrant was the one who committed the Christchurch shooting. Though partially correct, there was somebody else that everyone is forgetting about. Before you discount me as a troll on the internet who is just making up a story for funsies, just know that I am an FBI agent. Concretely, I investigate suspicious activity, which includes planned attacks. I would get pinged whenever there is any keyword on the web that associates with mass shootings. Another important piece of information about myself is that I work in the niggerology department of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. It is a field of study where we study the behavior of niggers and why they chip out. I have access to a large-scale database where I'm able to watch over suspicious nigger internet activity. Please note that I am only allowed to do this to individuals who are flagged as suspicious, even though it is a known fact that all niggers are naturally criminally insane. I'll have to admit, spending so much time each day looking at all the awful shit niggers do on a daily basis disgusts me, but the pay is great. It was about a couple of months before the Christchurch shooting, when I was on duty at my niggerology job. One of my superiors emailed me a memo. It detailed a case of possible nigger criminal activity. I took a look. I was first presented with a photograph of this ugly black man named George Floyd. I took a look at him for a second and holy shit, it looked like a person took a shit and built a Minecraft poop golem with it. Below the image underlined his criminal activity, which included the infamous moment he threatened to shoot a pregnant lady for her pregnant belly pics. All of that happened years ago, so it wasn't relevant information. However, the section after that described the reason why my superior sent me this. Because of George Floyd's history of monkey-like shenanigans, law enforcement requires him to attend periodic psychiatrist appointments. Even though appointment material is supposed to remain confidential, they've secretly sent us the psychiatrist notes because the things that George Floyd disclosed were very messed up. The next section of the memo summarized the notes. It all started when George Floyd got into this odd phase of wanting to be white. He constantly told his psychiatrist about how he is sick and tired of being a nigger and he is toying with the idea of being a transracial. He complained about the size of his nose and lips, which are big even for nigger standards. Obviously, the idea of being trans in any aspect is degenerate as fuck, so that raised a red flag. George Floyd was prescribed some useless meds to treat it. In the next session, he told the psychiatrist that the meds weren't working. Sheep mane, I want to be white because I hate my fat nose mane, George Floyd would say reoccurring. As time passed, George Floyd began to become deluded to believe he is white. His mental state went deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. After months passed since then, he fully believed he is white, despite still being the monkey who takes the nigger drug fentanyl and eats banana sandwiches. George Floyd adopted the habit of dyeing his skin white whenever he'd go in public because he was too poor of a nigger to afford transracial surgery. He would even go as far as wearing wigs with the appearance of white people. The psychiatrist saw this as a big problem, which is why we got this info in the first place. But believe me, it gets crazier. You know how trannies would suffer these psychological episodes of depression after their transitions? Well, George Floyd exhibited similar behavior because he was a transracial. He would overdose on fentanyl due to his suicidal thoughts, but would fail all the time because of how much of a loser he was. A lot of people who passed by him would snicker and make fun of him. Whenever that happens, George Floyd would experience these ego deaths which gradually shattered his delusion. George Floyd knew that deep down, he is still a nigger. As a result, he got furious and blamed his own race for the fact that he's not white. He would turn against other niggers, seething their existence. This led to him committing a chain of black-on-black crimes, but that wasn't enough. Eventually, he expressed hate toward other non-white races, such as Asians, Pajites, Muslims, and so on. Now, this was everything from the psychiatrist's notebook. I was quite intrigued by this whole thing, so I decided that I wanted to dig deeper into this. I emailed my superior back, saying that I wanted full access to George Floyd's internet activity. Because I was one of the longtime workers at the FBI, I was granted approval. I was then given the access key which allowed me to hack into George Floyd's computer. I then observed George Floyd's online activity for the next few months leading up to the Christchurch shooting. I'll provide a brief summary as follows. George Floyd realized that he doesn't want the production of non-white people in the future. Despite his primitive brain, he actually expressed sympathy for the future generations to come. George Floyd then joined numerous nationalist communities. After some distant networking, he bumped into Brenton Tarrant himself. Through online forums and video calls, they would exchange the details of their beliefs. As said before, George Floyd's main motive was to completely eradicate all non-whites from the planet to prevent all of the future generations from suffering the feeling of being dumb, low IQ nigga monkeys. Brenton Tarrant was a bit different. He only hated other cultures that come to his land. Invaders. Early on, they both had already begun discussing plans on committing a mass shooting someday. With George Floyd's wider range of hatred, his ambitions were higher when it came to how large of an attack he wanted to start. Brenton Tarrant took notice of how far George Floyd was with this and questioned him. He was leaning towards just shooting up the Christchurch mosque. On the other hand, George Floyd was more so interested in a larger scale genocide. We want to kill people. George Floyd would chimp out. He and Brenton Tarrant spent a lot of time each day sorting things out, negotiating a plan. George Floyd wanted to be the one to do all the killing. Brenton Tarrant wasn't fond of that idea. Niggers are almost always bad at using guns because they have trash aim. After some mediation, they eventually settled for the idea of George Floyd being the main gunman, while Brenton Tarrant will be the overseer. To elaborate, George Floyd was going to be the one to carry out the initial attack. Brenton Tarrant knew that because George Floyd will most likely get his ass clapped early on, chances are he can take over. The deal is that George Floyd still has to take some of the blame. He had to promise not to run away in the act. After that, they discussed the juicy details, such as the specific location and time. Christchurch Mosque, New Zealand on March 15th. I took note of that and set up a ton of hidden cameras in that area. At the time, I didn't know that they were going to do this on Facebook Live. George Floyd wanted to be remembered as a white person in the event he gets killed during the shooting. So he went into the dark web and visited this online store called CustomMask.com. It is e-commerce that sells custom-made hyper-realistic masks of real people. How it works is you upload an image of the person you want a mask of, and pay an amount depending on how detailed you want it to be. George Floyd had saved a screenshot of one of his video meetings with Brenton Tarrant. He cropped it and sent it over to custommasks.org. He picked the maximum realism option, which cost him $100,000. George Floyd used all the money he got from all of his prior robberies to pay that amount. Days later, he received the mask in the mail. George Floyd put it on and tested it on his web camera. Even though I was able to notice his large nose protruding from the rubbery mask, it still looked pretty damn real, enough to look exactly like Brenton Tarrant from a quick glance. On the day of the shooting, I braced myself, ready to watch this epic event unfold. Please note, when you supposedly see Brenton Tarrant show his face near the beginning of the Facebook live stream, it was actually George Floyd wearing the Brenton Tarrant mask. At 1:40 p.m., I saw the van pull up to the Christchurch Mosque. George Floyd in his Brenton Tarrant costume exited the vehicle and grabbed the guns from the trunk.